Alright, here we are with another video. Just because you buy a brand new car doesn't mean it's reliable. This is such a common misconception. My mom has a 2018 Alfa Romeo Giulia, whatever. It's the all-wheel drive, 2-liter turbo, whatever. So it's an Italian-made sports car, Italian. So everyone's like, oh, the quality, it must be great, And even I told her, I'm like, you don't want to buy this car. You don't. Well, we'll buy the car anyway, of course. And I think within the first 3,000 miles, the entire PCM got fried and the whole wiring harness in the car had to be changed. About 5,000 miles later from that, the sunroof started to creak. And it's not just like a tiny little creak here and there. It's whenever you're driving, all you hear is like hitting the roof. Brings it to the dealership. Well, I mean, there's nothing we can do. And ships it out. You know, it is what it is. When I bought my Ford Ranger, I had about 13,000 miles on it when I didn't even notice because it was happening at a progressive rate that I didn't even realize. I knew something was off and loud, but I just thought, it's a Ford. It is what it is, because my level of what is broken is not, I guess, as finely attuned to my girlfriend. My girlfriend is very anal about certain shit on her cars. Like, if she realizes that there's something up, then there's something up. And she's like, what is that noise that's coming from your truck? And I'm like, what are you talking about? We go for a drive, and all you hear is like this shh kind of noise whenever I'm like, yeah, you're right. Ends up my carrier bearing on my two-piece drive shaft went bad. It has 13,000 miles on it. Now it's under warranty and stuff like that, but it's more time you got to take away from bringing it back to the dealership and then having them fix it, and then you got to worry about a rental or another car or how you're going to get to work and all that. So just over time, shit like that just gets annoying. And that happened at only 13,000 miles. When I'm over 100,000 miles and my warranty is now expired, what's the solution? Well, now I got to buy a $450 drive shaft, and yeah, it's easy. I know how to do it. I can throw it in. That's $450 gone. I got a comment on one of my videos with a guy who had a Honda Accord and a Honda Civic, and it was a 2017 Accord and a 2020 Civic. And he was saying that, well, it's pretty much just a bunch of BS. If you buy the right car, then if you buy the right modern car, and I guess this just qualifies for any car, which is the point I'm trying to make, it doesn't matter whether it's new or old, you can still find a reliable vehicle, but not all of them will be reliable. He's saying he did all of his maintenance. It was a 2020 Civic and a 2017 Accord. Those cars don't have too many issues. But when an issue does happen, which it will, it's not a matter of if, it's when, you will be screwed. And here's the reason why. Something happens to anything on the computer system of that car, you're screwed. If something happens to the engine on that car, it's never going to be the same. You're screwed. High pressure fuel pumps, high pressure fuel rails, all this new technology, these 1.5 liter or 2 liter Earth Dreams engines were meant to be fuel economic. A lot of them are coming around leaking coolant. This guy must have got lucky. It is what it is. Let's say that the car was probably $30,000 brand new, which it was. It's probably a little bit more than that depending on the model. If it's a 2020, you got to think about COVID. You got to think about how the prices of the cars were. It was probably high 20s, really high 20s, low 30s, give or take. That car should last you as long as you want it to, as long as you're willing to invest the relative amount to do your maintenance. And this guy, from what he said, he was doing his maintenance. All well and good. when something like an engine goes on that car, the cost to keep it back to the standard on where it was before is insanely higher than it was the previous generations of Honda before, relative to the amount of income people would make on a weekly basis. It's quite simple. You're spending $5,000 probably minimum on an engine, give or take. If something goes wrong, if something were to go wrong. Back in the day, you had a bad head gasket. This is what you did. You took the engine apart, you replaced the head gasket, and you put the cylinder head back on the engine, and you put everything back together, and the relative cost to do the labor was cheaper, and you still got the same result. Now, a head gasket goes, you're replacing the whole engine because it's too expensive to risk the possible future faults. So instead of something being a $600 fix, you're now spending $5,000. Do you get my drift? Just because something doesn't go wrong now, you can incrementally spend $5,000 over the course of 0 miles to 100,000 miles. But if you're spending $5,000 at the 100,000 mile mark, and then everything after that is in your hands, no manufacturer warranty, nothing to cover it, it's fair game at that point. You're going to get screwed when something else happens, because that's just how it goes. The parts availability, the cost of the parts, the cost of the labor, you're spending top dollar to get the basic thing done. Nobody's taking the time to take these CVT, it's a Civic, so nobody's taking the time to take the CVT transmissions apart to fix them. People are just replacing the unit, which is what you should do if you're worried about the damage that could have been done. Like, torque converters go bad on a lot of Tacomas that I see. The deal is that, yeah, you replace the torque converter. A lot of the times you're replacing the whole transmission. You know why? Because dealerships aren't going to risk having the transmission maybe be bad in case of a torque converter. And we're not taking the time to look into things like the transmission because it costs time and it costs money. There is no easy process to get around it. Things aren't as simple as they were before, nor are they as affordable. So dealerships aren't going to take the time to look at things necessary to say if it's cheaper or not. They're just going to sell you the most expensive thing that'll solve the problem. Oh, the engine's got a knock? Put a new engine in it. Here's a good example. This is actually forcing, here's a counter argument to my own argument. Because the trucks are so new. If the trucks weren't so new and the price of the engines would cost just a little bit more, a little bit less, this is the case. So the brand new Tundras are blowing engines like crazy, something with the main bearings, maybe something with the oil. You know, the lowest I've seen, it had like 7,000 miles, and the engine blew up and started rod knocking. Now here's the issue. We're lifting the frames off these trucks, the body off the frame, reassembling the engine and putting it all back together and making sure everything works properly. It's not going to work properly. As soon as everything's fucking disassembled from the factory, I mean, you pretty much just bought a lemon truck. These new Tundras should be under a lemon law. That it's ridiculous that these engines with such low mileage are being destroyed, and this is a big problem, because you know what, the 5.7s that came beforehand, there was nothing wrong with them. There was nothing wrong with them. They worked. They did their job. You know, these modern Tundras, are they getting better fuel economy? Yeah, at the cost of more money, for more manufacturing, for more of this pollutant nonsense. So it's not really reliable. You're not getting better fuel economy. What's the point? We're backtracking here. We're implementing new technology, all this new shit, and we don't know anything about it. Just because something is new, then this, again, I'm going to go back to what I'm saying, loop it back. Just because something is new does not mean it's reliable in any sense. things will go wrong. And when they do, it could be from 0 to 7,000 miles. It could be at 100,000 miles with these modern cars. That's not the premise. That's not the issue. The issue is that these modern cars, just from an expensive standpoint with all of these gadgets, and from a parts standpoint, and from user accessibility, consumer friendly, cars used to be the most obvious consumer friendly thing is building something that looks good, is 100% easy to work on, and is 100% easy affordable for anybody. That's what consumer friendly is in its purest form. Not that cars were always this way. No, nothing was ever truly consumer friendly, but it was more consumer friendly, and we were moving in a better direction. When the 60s and 70s happened, we were going in the opposite direction. Then we kind of pulled it back in. Then the 80s happened, we were kind of going back in the wrong direction. And then the 90s, we kind of started pulling it back in a little bit. 2000s, we're kind of in this hovering period. We go to the late 2010s, all right, we're still moving in this weird direction. Now we're in the we're in the 2020s, and oh boy, all right, now we're really rolling down this hill in the wrong direction. And it's kind of getting to the point where it's going to be impossible to pull back. Because that's going to be the new standard. We're not going to be able to balance it enough to just pull back enough. And it's getting kind of scary because all these used cars are going to be sold like hotcakes. A lot of the parts are going to have to be man-made. I had another comment that this is like Cuba, and it's 100% right. If things are going in the direction that they're going, with the amount of money that people are making and the way that the technology for automobiles are moving, it's going to be a lot like Cuba. And we're going to have to start making parts, and we're going to have to start putting different engines in different things because they ain't going to be reliable as much as we say they are. Once they're at the end of their service life, person with Honda Civic, if you hit 300,000 miles in your Honda Civic, that's great. It's at the end of its service life at that point, because you're going to look at the price tag and what it's going to cost to fix it, and you're going to go, at that point, I might as well just buy something new. And that's the problem. This is the issue. We can't just keep replacing all of these massive things. Like, if the environment was such a concern to all these people, then if we were just replacing it every 5 to 10 years, something that costs well above $30,000 and will cost, at the rate inflation is going, will cost well above $30,000 every 5 to 10 years, this is a problem. And that's 5 to 10 years on a Honda, which was a better average back in the day, considering you still see 90s and early 2000s Hondas on the road today. These cars will not be on the road for longer than that. They won't, and that's a problem. We're going to be mass producing piles of garbage that aren't going to be able to be fixed, and no one's going to be able to know how to fix them. And there's a big mechanic shortage, and mechanics aren't getting paid to fix them. Dealerships aren't going to pay them to fix them. They're trying to make as much money. There's a huge separation between the middle class and the rich. Middle class is poor. There is no more middle class, and the problem is that people are going to really struggle, and they're not going to be able to get to work. They're not going to be able to have the next generation. They're not going to be able to have families that keep these businesses. Like, as much as the rich, is doing all these poor practices, is as much as we're not going to, we're the workforce. We are the workforce. And eventually, natural selection is going to happen. The people who aren't going to be able to make it through this shit is not going to work. And only the people that are willing to work and are willing to think outside the box aren't going to be putting up with these, standards anymore, and they're going to be doing their own thing. And then these, very rich and wealthy corporations and manufacturers are going to start losing money, which they already are. We're seeing that now with the force of EVs. Again, listen, I'm not anti-EV. I'm not. I'm really not. You can't force things on people, though. You can't. People need that choice. Forcing things in any manner is bad. It's bad practice. It's bad for the consumer. It's bad for the manufacturer. Nobody wins. You need to have your own line for cars that I'm not saying you can't cater to a specific audience, because when you build, say, a sports car, you're obviously catering to an audience that wants to buy a car like that. No shit. It's a common practice. But you need to be able to cater to an audience that just wants simple reliability without this modern day shit. And then eventually the standards will change and the technology will evolve around those simple standards. You can't just make the technology and force people to change because that's what you think is best. That's not how that works. If you want to ease something into society, it needs to be eased into society for it to become relevant and for it to work. You know, every 10 years, there's this one guy that says, oh, these cars are getting crazier and crazier as time goes on. People have been saying that since the 1910s. You know, after, you know, when the Dodge, was it the Dodge Brothers? When the Dodge Brothers came out with their car to combat the Model T, it had more options on it. You can buy it in any other color but black, and it had all these more luxury accommodation options on it. Henry Ford was the pioneer because he made cars for the people. They were reliable. For what they were at the time, they worked and it did its job and it did it well. Then the society started to change where people started wanting more because of the boredom factor, and the next generation of children wanted something with a little more pizzazz, moving more into the boomers mentality, but in an early 1900s fashion. So a little more pizzazz, so the Dodge brothers made a car to accommodate that. Then Ford started losing money, so Ford had to kind of do something to then combat that, and then thus making the slow progression in the fields of technology. But now it's completely different. Now everyone wants because of social media and all this shit that goes on in the world nowadays, everyone wants the glamour, everyone wants the performance and the style, and they want it in cars that just aren't like they want it in these cars. Like, you want the style, the glitz and the glamour is when you buy the overly complicated Mercedes, BMW, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and no, now the Civics and the Corollas have been infected with that plague. Everyone wants these, 19-inch wheels on their Corolla XSE Cross or whatever, and they want it to look all fancy and good, and then it just causes premature wear and damage. The car was never intended for something like that. It was supposed to be an economy car for all. You want the glitz and glamour, you buy the GR package, you buy stuff like that, but people don't have money, but they want to have all this glitz and glamour and make it like, and that's a problem, because that mentality is creating this gullible sense of people, and the manufacturers are catering to the gullibleness of people, not the actual needs or necessities or just, if anything, just basic wants. They're just pretty much taking candy from a baby. And the problem is just because it's new and it's got all this glitz and glamour doesn't mean it's going to be reliable. Oh, well, I own a Toyota. Toyota. I bought a new Toyota. New Toyotas are reliable. No, they're not. They're not. They are not reliable at all. They really, people overestimate them. People overestimate any new car and assume that they're reliable, but they really just aren't. In my opinion, and this is a story that comes from me, and I don't care. I'm old enough now to where the story is, relevant and irrelevant. If my mom's watching, sorry, but you're going to hear the truth. My sister has a 2005 Toyota Corolla that was given to her by my grandmother. And when I was a teenager, I was an absolute fucking idiot. As are most. I beat the ever-living fuck out of that thing. That thing, the fact that it drives is a testament to what I'm trying to say. It was a 2005 Corolla, 1ZZ, 1.8 liter, naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, no turbo, didn't need it, 4-door, tan interior, it's black, it's automatic, it's It's a grandma car. It's what it was intended for. It gets over 30 miles to the gallon. It doesn't need a turbo. It doesn't need high compression or high pressure fuel pumps for emissions. It does its job. You know, as long as you're not shoving a tube from the tailpipe into the cabin, and then you're going to really feel like how much emissions it puts out, because you can do that in any car and then you'll pass out. If you want to measure the rate between a new Toyota Corolla to an old Toyota Corolla and how much hydrocarbons are being thrown out in the tailpipe, if that's such a big deal to everybody, then just put a tube in the tailpipe and shove it in the cabin. Whichever one makes you pass out faster, I guess, is the worst one. I beat the ever-living shit out of that car. I've literally submerged it in mud, went rock crawling in it, spun it off a median in the highway, and probably have drifted that thing. I'm surprised the e-brake cable didn't snap, and probably slid that thing around every single corner imaginable known to man, hitting curbs and shit, and it still survived. And just recently, it had a code for an O2 sensor, and that's it. And it was a $20 part. You swapped it, you put it back in, and you never had a problem ever again. Wow. Would you look at that? Isn't that crazy? And it's about to hit 200,000 miles. The suspension components are the same. Didn't even change the control arms. Never had to do a tie rod. Struts are original. I think my sister just put pads and rotors on it. So, you want to do that with a new Corolla? Nowadays, the thing's made of glass. It's gonna break in 2 seconds, man. The thing won't survive. That's insane. And not to mention that you have electronic parking brakes and all that nonsense, so it's anti-fun too. These modern cars are made of glass. You want to talk about reliability? That's reliability, and it's practical. It's easy to work on. You can buy a 1ZZ engine for $200 out of a junkyard with 100,000 and still get another 200,000 out of the engine. It's crazy. It's just like the common misconception of these cars being reliable is funny. It's like, I just made a car do something it wasn't intended for, it really wasn't intended for, and it still survived, no problem. That, to me, that generation of Toyota was the most reliable generation of Toyota on the actual planet. Not anymore, though. The good old Tacomas are changing, you know. The Corollas are changing, the Tundras are changing, new drivetrain, new platform, new everything. And it's gonna all go to shit, because no one's going to be able to afford to fix it. I had another car come in the shop yesterday, actually, and my boss actually got pretty upset with me. It was a Toyota Avalon, and it had 40,000 miles on it, and it was a 2020 or something like that. Or I don't know, it was something like that. And the door card was rattling, or the speaker was rattling off the door card or whatever. Customer was complaining, saying like, well, my door kind of every once in a while like has this creak, has this rattle, and it's just like, yes, it does. And my boss didn't really like that answer, thought it was very snarky and remark, kind of just rude, which it was a little bit and really wasn't at the same time. It wasn't my intention, but it was also the truth. You know, you're buying a $40,000 car that's made of Fisher-Price plastic for door cards, and it has a Toyota emblem on it. Like, even, like, you're not buying a handcrafted Ferrari. These things are being pushed off, like, off the hot press, you know, like pancakes. Like, yes, plastic rattles. I can my solution was to shove, like, rubber, like, blocks or something, like, or wedges in it to put tension on the door so it made it stop rattling. Obviously, that didn't go well with my coworkers, even though it was a completely reasonable solution. But it is what it is. You know, I'm sorry, but you spent $40,000 on a Toyota, and you expected it to be this thing. And it's like, I get it. I get the mentality. I understand what you're saying. Well, I'm spending this much money on a car. Shouldn't it be this way? No, unfortunately, no. This isn't the real world. We haven't invented the noise-proof car. Like, if that's the case, go buy an electric car because you won't hear anything. It doesn't make any engine noises, but the engine noises are comforting because that must mean to them that they work, but not the interior rattling. Well, how about the fact that it had 19-inch wheels, and every single time you go down the road, all you hear is whoa, 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 whoa. It's like I'm going back in time or something, in a time machine. But no, that noise doesn't bother you. Just a little kind of annoying rattling, like every once in a while sound from the door card will bother you. I get it. I know, like I'm saying, I know you spend $40,000 on a car and you want it to be this specific way. Every single time my Ranger clunks into gear, I'm like, yep, that's a Ford because it's a Ford. But people complain about issues like that because it's like, I just spent $60,000 on a truck and the transmission clunks. You bought a Ford truck, sir. You bought a Toyota with plastic Fisher-Price door cards. It is what it is. We can try and put wedges in it and fix it. They're mass producing these things. We don't control stuff like that. The standards of people have gotten to the point where it's just like, you want us to do things that will make it more comfortable for you, which is fine. Going to the dealer is not the place for that. They want things they need to make money. They don't make money off of that. Personally, if somebody came in with an issue on a car like that, I would put more thought and effort into it if it was my own personal shop and I could help you out as an individual and treat you like an individual, not like I'm trying to make money off of you. Because in places like that, I don't make money from helping people doing that. I need to do what I need to do for my family and for my pocket, because I need to survive, because mechanics don't get paid enough as it is. And, I can't spend a whole lot of time, giving you an answer and, putting sound deadener liner in your door card to try and solve this problem for you. I just can't. So I'm sorry, but it is what it is. There's nothing I can do. My arm's being twisted, their arm's being twisted. The manufacturer is twisting their own arms because they're the middleman that can fight back and not have to do shit like this anymore. But it is what it is. Like if I had my own shop and somebody came in and said, my door car rattles, can you help me? I'd take it apart. I'd look at it for them. I'd be like, well, this is what we can do and this is how it can help you. Don't go to a dealership expecting that kind of service, first of all. They don't care. They don't care, and there's nothing I can do about it. If they don't care, I can't help you, and that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. I wish we lived in a different world, but at the end of the day, you need to learn from your own standpoint that if I'm not going to be able to help you and these dealers aren't going to be able to help you, you need to take matters into your own hands, and you need to realize that, well, that's the last time I'm buying a car like this if this is what I'm going to have to deal with. And you know what? You should. But at the same time, you need to understand that what you spent your money on is what you spent your money on in this, you spent it on a Toyota. You spent it on a luxurious Avalon, a Toyota at the end of the day. I don't care what you call it, but you spent your money on a Toyota. It's not going to be perfect, exactly what you want it to be. If I wanted to buy a quiet truck and then I go buy a Ford Ranger, you bought the wrong truck, okay? Because trucks were never meant for things like that. Trucks were meant for the middle class, for the working man, even the poor, as working class trucks for working class people. Now they're becoming so luxurious. So many options and buttons and switches, and it's nonsense, and it defeats the entire purpose. And there's no replacement. You want a luxury car? It's like the whole Kia Stinger thing. Like Kia made their performance car. It flopped when it came out. And the reason why is you don't buy cars like that from Kia. They've never proven themselves in the past to be able to produce a car like this. Why would it be better now? Only later in time did people realize that they weren't bad once they were used and not as much money as they were. Because there's a correlation between how much you're spending and what you're getting. If you spend $40,000 on a Toyota, you're already doing it wrong. And it is what it is. Like, the fact that I spent a ridiculous amount of money on my truck, I did it wrong. You're doing it wrong spending that much on a Toyota. Toyotas don't need to cost that much. If you're it's 0.2% that holds the 99% of the wealth in America right now. It's like 700 people or something. So, you know, what kind of cars are being catered to us? It's nothing. It's not. These cars are only made for the extremist amount of wealthy people that are making at least around over $100,000 a year take home. And it is what it is. And people want them to be reliable, and they're not. And they're not going to be. The standards on what is being pushed on us are making them more unreliable. I saw a video this morning of a guy from the 90s with his 90s Ford Explorer make a hydrogen separation unit. It's an oxygen hydrogen separation unit where he gets hydrogen gas funneled into the combustion chamber on his Ford Explorer, and it was able to increase his fuel mileage by 50%. He was averaging like 13 something miles to the tank, and he was able to increase it up by like 56%. He did the math. It was in a video. And then the guy fucking just disappeared off the face of the earth, never to be heard again from anybody, which is weird. If anyone knows what video I'm talking about, there's that guy who developed like the really efficient style carburetor system, and then he never heard from him again either. And it seems just very weird. You know, we could be at a point where society could be technologically advanced in an efficient way, but these regulations are making it impossible. I'm in favor for having there be some type of regulation as a challenge, because having something put in front of you is what almost forces you to become more creative and out of the box with your thinking and coming up for complex problems, solutions that are more efficient. But also, if you had no pressure on you, it would also open up your mind to more creative thinking, because the sky's the limit at that point. But sometimes people get a little bit more comfortable when there's no stress on them for anything, and then they become accustomed to the way of living, and then the creative nature kind of dies off due to the comfortability. Now, there's a link to comfortability and creative nature, and there's a link to having restrictions on you and having to become, more complex with your problem-solving skills in your creative nature. But in this reality, what's happening is that these engineers are coming up with. I got another comment on another video saying he was an engineer. I hope he's telling the truth. Saying that he himself was an engineer, and the problem here is that they're being told to design something. They go show it to their higher ups. Their higher ups say it costs too much. They go design it again, and they say, well, it costs too much. They go design it again. Well, it costs too much. They design it again to appease them, and they go, yeah, that'll work. But then you respond with, yeah, but this isn't efficient at all. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't solve any problem. We're making things worse. And the response they're getting is, well, it's cheaper to make, isn't it? And there's the issue. These cars are being put together with sticks that's cheap to make, and they make it look all pretty and nice. They're putting lipstick on a pig. And people think that that's the evolution of technology. It's a misconception. It's the idea, it's the look, the grandeur of the evolution of technology. But the evolution of technology, looks might be deceiving. Just because something looks good doesn't mean it is. Only until you really own something, then do you realize that, it might not be as good as you thought. So the big issue, the big solution to this problem was we need to stop this funding of nonsensical practices of making things look good. We need a little bit more function over form. And of course, there's going to be people who complain about it and go, well, why can't I have something that looks good? And you know what? There's a special market for you, and we should be able to cater to you in that market. But not everybody in the market should have to cater to you. And it is what it is, and that's just the way it is. And I'm going to end that video there. I hope that has anything to do with modern cars not being as reliable as possible, because I was losing track halfway in my thoughts about what the fuck I was even saying in the first place. So there it is. Thank you. Here's another video. I'm going to wait like a week to upload this because because the YouTube algorithm is stupid. It like goes up and down. It works. It doesn't work. It makes one particular thing more popular than the other. Another control thing. It is what it is. I'll see you later.